All right, please stand, put your hand over your heart and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now I see a section, public comments. Public, have you got any comments?
Y'all just here to see it.
Okay, in that case, I will turn it over to the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tonight we have our first budget workshop of the year. We could have up to 2 more if the council so desires. And I'm going to just flip this straight to Mr. Warren for the introduction.
Awesome. Good evening, council. This is our first workshop. This is the operations workshop. Need something here. There we go. So as you can tell on this slide, our process is very similar to last year, which we received good feedback. Our first workshop is tonight. The next workshop would be the capital workshop, which will be June 23rd. And then, hold on one second. All right, there we go. Next workshop would be, or actually we would adopt the tentative millage rate to certify to the property appraiser in August, and then finally we'd actually adopt a balanced budget in 2 meetings in September. This is the strategic planning budget cycle that we actually presented earlier in the year. Included in this is also the city manager's evaluation process. As you can tell, we are in the May timeframe. This is when the city council is advised on our on the budget process, and they are and the council provides us guidance on the next fiscal year budget. And as you recall, back in January, council and staff participated in a visioning session, and in March, the council did vote on their council objectives for us to frame our upcoming budget. As you can tell, this was the council objectives that were adopted back in March. All these do tie into capital projects that you will see in the second workshop. And then also we did kind of shuffle around the strategic goals to align them with council's visions of the city itself. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Crystal Strickland, our finance director, to actually go through the operational budget.
Good evening. Oh, thank you. I like to, stand up here where I can look you in the eyes and you can check out my new haircut. And we're going to talk about the budget for the coming year. So this workshop we're going to focus on the operating budget. So I tried as best as I could to keep away from all of the capital projects. By the way, we are working on updating our procurement manual. Right now, the city defines a capital asset as anything with a value over $1,000. So over the past year, for example, last year I could buy a picnic table for under $1,000. This year I cannot. So last year, what would have been an operating expense, just replacing a picnic table, is now a capital expense. So until we can get the policy updated. So let's dive right into our slide presentation here. So we're going to start off with our general fund revenues. It's still a bit early in the year. We don't have the ad valorem figures yet from the property appraiser. I went on the property appraiser's site on April 30th in preparation for this meeting just to see what tentative taxable figures he had in there. At this moment, they've increased 3%, which is the Save Our Home Act minimum amount, but it was applied across the board to all of the parcels in Destin. They should be getting the final numbers to us by statute by July 1st, but traditionally they've reacted a lot earlier and they tend to get those figures to us in June. So we'll come back in June again and look at the revenues then. Licenses and permits, you might recall that Florida statute changed and we now have to track the building fund separately, so it's not in the general fund anymore, but it's still in the 100 range of funds, so it's just separate, it has to cover its own expenses. So the licenses and permits, they're increasing. Let's see, I'm going to get to my page so I can. We expect the licenses and permits to increase at approximately 8%. A large percentage of this, well, there's two of them. One is we've discussed increasing the solid waste franchise fee from 1% up to 6%, so that would bring in an additional $200,000 for the city. And then since we've had Intergov in action, the building permits that have been coming in, there've been a lot, they've been coming in a lot faster, so the revenues have increased on that level as well. Other major categories we have here, so you see the taxes includes the ad valorem, the communication sales tax, business tax receipts, so that's a fee that we apply to all of the businesses, people doing business in Destin, and gas tax number one. Gas tax number one, by statute, you can use it on operations for transportation, so that would mean keeping our roads, sidewalks, street lights, all of those things maintained and operated. But for the city, I've chosen to take 100% of that gas tax number one and throw it down to our renewal and replacement program, specifically for remilling, restriping, and everything related to the roads and sidewalks. The next section that we have is intergovernmental. Intergovernmental includes the half-cent sales tax that we receive from the state, a municipal sharing tax that is shared with us by the state, and we also have regular operating grants from the TDC and from DEP to help us run some of our parks, keep the bathrooms full of toilet paper and keep the areas clean. Also in intergovernmental, we have DOT gives us money to help us maintain our medians, to help keep the traffic signal lights on, and also to help cover the cost of the utilities and the light fixtures for the highway lighting. We also receive annually about $70,000 from the county library cooperative to keep the library operating. So that's a snapshot of our general fund revenues that cover operations for the city. Let's see, maybe go. Oh, here we go. Here's a slide with some more details about the revenues. I think we slipped over one. No, we didn't. So the general fund revenue highlights. We just went over most of these. Like I mentioned, the ad valorem, I don't have the ad valorem numbers yet.
Crystal,
Stand
do you need
closer.
the portable mic?
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yes, okay. So other revenues, licenses and permits, you see I have the solid waste franchise fee increase that I just mentioned. We also have a category called other revenue. That includes all of the money that we've invested. We tend to bring in about $200,000 a year of investment income. It's been looking really negative because our portfolio value has dropped, but we're still bringing in that actual interest revenue. So the fair market value is just an accounting thing that we do. It makes things, not look as positive, but I'm hopeful that next year our portfolio value will even out. And this is just, I have a few reminders on here. The parking fees, because they were over $400,000 last year, you might recall, effective October 1 of this year, we chose to restrict those by resolution. So they got pulled out of the general fund, out of our main operating fund, and we're using those parking fee revenues to maintain the parking lots.
Crystal,
Yes.
can I interrupt you for 1 second? Just so I understand, just for clarity. So those numbers, I think it's really loud tonight, unless it's just me. So those numbers, the reminders that you're talking about, are not in the projected FY23 slide that you had previously.
They're not part of the general fund. They've
Correct.
been pulled down below.
Right.
So you'll see those in the.
Previous
the
slide that
yeah,
says general fund revenues.
Correct, so they're not
Those
part
are
of the
not in
general
that
fund
number. All right,
revenues.
thank you very much.
They've been pulled out. Building permit fees again, we're expecting, yeah, they've been coming in a lot higher than in past years, but those are no longer part of the general fund revenues. Those, along with the expenditures, those cover the cost of our building official, our building inspectors, and all the equipment that they use. And then we have that new 2% electric franchise fee that was just recently adopted. So effective January of this year, we're starting to already collect that new 2%. So that new 2% is restricted to undergrounding. So that's also not in here. It's down with our restricted monies. Let's see. There we go. So some of the projects that I'm working on this year and that are probably going to lapse over into next year, we're reviewing our schedule of fees for all of the departments because we need to update our fees to better cover a lot of our costs. We're exploring incorporation of certain islands within the city limits that we would like to annex in. I believe that'll be coming to a council meeting soon to tell you about the process. We also have an impact fee study underway. Alan Steinbeck of 3TP Ventures is working on that. We would like to do a building permit fee study, and that's budgeted under professional services for next year. And we would also like to have another look at our business tax receipts to see if we can simplify that fee schedule and encourage, something simpler that would encourage compliance, make it easier for us to manage and also make it easier for local businesses to keep on top of. Again, I haven't received our new property values yet, but this is a slide that just shows our trend. It starts back in 1984 when the city was incorporated, and you can see how it peaked and then it dropped, and now we're just about back where we were where it peaked last time back in 2006 or so. And this will be updated when I get the new numbers, but this is just a little reminder of how the ad valorem could be projected out. We have the city's ad valorem, and then we have the 2 CRAs. So the thing with the CRA district is it's an incremental financing thing. So based on the base year that the district was established, any increase in the property values, that amount of ad valorem goes right into the CRA. We can't use it in our general fund, and it's restricted for use in those areas. So this is, these are the details of how it changed last year. As you can see, the town center CRA area increased in value 36%. And this is what our ad valorem looks like at different millage rates. And this is another one that'll be updated at the next meeting when I get the data. But basically, if you change our millage rate from 1.6 to 1.7, that would generate an additional nearly $600,000 at this point. And also, just a reminder to everybody, the cap, the millage rate cap in our charter is 2 mills. And that can only be changed with, by referendum. So now we're getting into our general fund expenditures. You're going to see on this slide and the next slide, I've portrayed the same expenditures in 2 different ways. This first slide shows by major functional category. So you can see a little trend here on how we've been spending money by general government, public safety. Public safety includes our code enforcement as well as our sheriff's officers, the contract with the sheriff's office. We also have crossing guards in there. Transportation is everything related to public works, roads, sidewalks, streetlights, signage. Culture and recreation is the next largest category that we have. We have a lot of parks in the city that we maintain and operate. And then we have the others. And here's another way to look at it. So this way of looking at it, It's the same figures, but here we see the breakdown by type of cost. Salaries and benefits, as you can see, are the largest component of our cost, and that's normal for a local government. You're going to see here that our salaries and benefits, both of those are increasing over 30%. And I'm going to go deep into the details tonight so you can see what's generating that increase. Contracts, we're trying to do more with the staff we have and hire out a little bit less. And then we have the operating category as well. So operations includes things like fuel, chemicals, fertilizers, office supplies, that new office desk or chair that somebody might need as long as it's under $1,000. And then we have contributions. The city likes to make certain contributions to different groups during the year, and I'll show those in detail also. Our debt has decreased because I refinanced some of our debt the other year. And we have, yeah, that's about it for that category. Let's see. So some of the general fund expenditure highlights, like I mentioned, salaries and benefits, we're going to get into those personnel details. Fuel and labor costs are up this year, as I'm sure everybody around the city has realized and probably feel that, you know, at the pump, or if you're trying to hire somebody to, you know, at your business or anything like that. And capital outlays will be set for the next meeting. So this is the consumer price index increase. March over March was 8.54%. I don't expect it to stay at 8.54%, but our city policy reads that we're supposed to give a cost of living to our personnel equivalent to the June over June consumer price index. I checked this morning, the April numbers just came in. It's dropped from 8.54% down to about 7.5%. So we'll see how that progresses. But that's the city policy, and that's something that you're going to want to discuss amongst yourselves this evening at this workshop. So this budget entertains 99 full-time employees and 29 part-time employees. I did not use FTEs because that can be a bit confusing. We have certain positions that are just 12 hours a week, like scorekeepers and crossing guards, but most of our part-time people work up to 29 hours a week. The 99, let's see, so we have 8.54% cost of living assumed in this projection, 2% merit increase, which, by the way, those merit increases, they happen on your work anniversary date, and but for the math, it's just simpler to apply it across the board. Our insurance, cost of insurance is increasing about 7% this year. Is our new positions, we have 4 full-time positions on the wish list. That includes an engineering assistant, and then 3 maintenance techs. 1 to help out with our stormwater and our swale maintenance, 1 more for the facilities maintenance, and 1 more for parks. I also have on the wish list a part-time, 16 weeks a year finance intern. And I've drawn up a curriculum for that internship program. So right now, today, we are recruiting to fill 14 full-time and 11 part-time positions. Yeah, so that's a lot of vacant positions, and it's had a very large impact on our budget this year. So what I budgeted this past year, even though we gave those incredible increases to salaries this past April, you're still going to see we're going to come in way under budget, underspent this year, and it's mainly because of all these open positions. People are just not applying. And here on this slide, I have a bunch of the details. So I'm going to open this up so I can look a little bit more into the details. So if you're wondering, how do we come up with these personnel projections? So we can look at this in different ways. We've got the full-time employees right now, with no changes, that would be about $5 million a year. And then we have about $865,000 because of the vacancies, that if they came on board, that would increase our expenditures. So total employees, just salaries alone, if we had all of our positions filled, that would be close to $6.4 million a year. But as you can see, because of all the vacancies, it looks like we're going to be closer to 5.4 million, about $1 million lower because of the vacancies. And then the 4 wish list people that we've added, they're going to add about $154,000 to our bottom line next year for the salary side. I also have listed up here some of the components for salaries. For example, if we had all of the people employed plus those vacancies and wish lists, it would be about $6 million for salaries. When we add in that up to 8.54% cost of living increase, that is $500,000 for you to consider. And then we have the merit increase, which is calculated at $130,000 if we go with this plan of 99 full-time and 29 part-time positions. In the middle, we have the count of the humans. You can see we've got 98 active employees right now, 25 vacancies, and then the 5 wish list positions. Just to give a little perspective, the benefits, if you're a single employee, benefits they're around just over $12,000. If you're an employee who comes in with a wife and children, the whole family plan, that would be just over $27,000. So the cost of one employee ranges greatly depending on the person that we bring in. So for budgeting purposes, I've taken an average just of all the employees that we have. We happen to have more that are just employee plus a child or employee plus a spouse. We don't have as many family employees right now, so the average has tended to be about $14,000 per employee for benefits. So this slide goes into some of the details on the benefits. Some things that, of course, we have no control over, FICA, which is the Social Security and Medicare. The city, as you may recall, we do not pay into Social Security for our full-time employees. Instead, we've chosen to put money into a 457 plan at 7.5%. And it's the amount that we put in for the employees, that 7.5%, they're immediately vested, it's theirs, just as like if we were paying into Social Security. And then we will match them up to 5% of their salary, which is on a 7-year vesting scale. So we have about 50 of our employees, so just barely over half of our employees are currently participating in our matching program. I'm hoping that at least 25 more positions will choose to join into the matching program for the retirement. And if they did, that would be another nearly $70,000 cost to the city. So that's budgeted in here. We also have the health insurance. Well, we've got health, dental, vision, hospital indemnity, short-term disability, long-term disability. We have all these different insurances that we pay for, 100% for employees, or we'll pay up to 2/3 if you add on family members. So our current cost is about $1.4 million. I'm assuming that the insurance is going to increase at about 7%. We'll update that as soon as we get a better number from our brokers, but that would be an additional $97,000 cost to the city. Workers' comp is another type of insurance that we have. That's coming in at about $96,000. If we fill those vacant wish list positions, that'll be another $22,000. So that's how I get to the $2.4 million for the benefits. As you recall, this past March, we went through a very extensive compensation study, and this was my presentation on the types of revenues that we have control over, revenues that we can increase, and so I threw that slide in just so that you can see, just as a reminder of where we were. And you'll notice again in here, the largest line on here is that increasing the solid waste franchise fee. The other fees will, we're going to work through as we can on the schedule of fees. Also, I'd like to point out that I've been working hard this past year to get general expenses allocated. So I like to know exactly how much does that library cost us. If we no longer had a library, then I would no longer have these IT expenses, for example. So Microsoft, they don't care where your employee is located or how many hours a day they're using a computer. All they care about is that I have one license per employee that has an email address. So those types of expenditures are now being allocated better. We're still working on our bases for allocation, but each year we're getting a little bit better at allocating out all of those costs. I've been working on finding ways to better capture all of the things that haven't been traditionally recorded on our books. For example, we do the landscaping at for the Maddie Kelly Arts Foundation. I'm estimating that's about a $30,000 a year cost to us, and if you count out the labor hours, the equipment, and we're working on the process so that we can actually record that and show that as a donation to that foundation. Rent subsidies. The museum is one of our buildings, Food for Thought building, the fishing rodeo building. We as a city, those are our buildings. We're still on the hook I pay the property insurance, and we're supposed to maintain those buildings. Although the people who are renting the buildings, they've invested a lot themselves, so we're working through those processes. And then we have other regular contributions that we do, like the school crossing guards. We spend about $9,000 a year in salaries for the crossing guards. The Economic Development Council, we give them about $14,000 a year. Fishing rodeo, scholarship fund, about $1,000 a year. So here's the bottom line. Here's our change in fund balance. So the top, get back to that. The very top table at the top is just the general fund. Here we go. Changes in fund balance. So the FY23 projected change in the general fund balance, we're going to add $1 million. So at the next council meeting, when we're going over the capital budget, you're going to have to choose how much of that 1 million or more or less that you want to invest into the renewal and replacement fund and towards other capital projects that are on our wish list. When we add in all of the other funds, which include the debt service funds, because those are technically part of the operating budget, they're not as discretionary as our capital investments. The net change in fund balance is going to be about $524,000. And if you add all of them together, all of those funds 01 through 221, that'll be adding about $1.5 million to the fund balance. So these are along the side here, I have the names of all of the funds that we're talking about: the general fund, the town center and harbor CRA districts, the building fund, parking fund, technology fund. Okaloosa Half Penny is included in here. And then so are the 3 debt service funds for the 3 pieces of debt that we have. One last piece I have here is the operating grants. I have them all listed out. The DOT median maintenance, we're anticipating $39,000. For highway traffic signal and highway maintenance, we're anticipating $146,000. Is it the traffic signals or the lights, the highway lights? One of those, it's just a pass-through right to the county. So the cash comes in from DOT and we pass it on through.
Yeah, that's the traffic signal
The traffic
maintenance
signal.
agreement.
And they're going to do it directly starting in 2024?
Starting in 2024, it'll be a direct agreement between DOT and the county. So we'll be cut out of the process.
And then we have up here the Leonard Destin Park. When we built the Leonard Destin Park, DEP promised us that they would pay for our operating and maintenance for approximately 10 years. They gave us a grant of about $900,000. We might spend it faster or we could spend it slower. Just, depends on how we budget. The Tdc Beach Operations is a special one. TDC has come to us with a request. They were paying for it out of their general TDC monies. Now they're asking that the city of Destin take it on from the 12.5% that they recently put into the the interlocal agreement. So that's another thing that we're going to discuss going forward. And then the county library cooperative, they've traditionally been giving us $60,000 to $70,000 a year. And we just put in the request, the application today to keep that going. So there we are with time for questions. So I just wanted to do just a little recap if I could. And I'm going to go back to the bottom line so we can see the change in fund balance. So number one, general government costs are now being allocated out. So we're getting a better picture of how much it really costs to run our parks. Personnel, salaries and benefit costs have risen. They're looking to be about 30% higher than our estimates for this year. That includes the 4 new positions. Again, that 8.5% that I put in here was the CPI index for March over March. April over April was only 7.5%. So that difference, each percentage that it goes up or down, costs us about $70,000. So we'll see what that's going to do. Insurance is estimated to be about 7% higher. Fuel costs are up, which relates to utilities. So when fuel costs go up, so do utility costs. Our median maintenance contract, we did look at possibly bringing in the median maintenance in-house. The contractor that does it for us now, they have 5 full-time people maintaining our medians. When we looked at bringing it in-house, the biggest hurdle we found was getting the equipment in time. So we might think about that at the capital budget meeting. Do we want to invest in additional equipment? Because the equipment we have with parks, it's used. It's on the parks. It's out there running all the time. So we would have to buy some more equipment. And but we're anticipating that median maintenance contract will increase about 11%. That's baked into this version. And then, of course, the TDC operations money. Is it going to continue coming from the TDC's general funds, or is it going to be coming out of our 12.5% that we were hoping to spend on purchasing more beach parcels and adding amenities for the tourists at the beach locations and the tourist locations? So those are my synopsis notes, and I'd really like to hear from each of you. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'll start. Thank you so much for putting it together, and your presentation is always very detailed and thorough. All the reports you provided ahead of time were very beneficial. So a couple of just questions on some of these slides. I know that you highlighted and you mentioned about the allocation of community benefits, things like the Medicare, and crossing guards, and things like that. So on the total employees of 122, when you're looking at 3 crossing guards, is that just the allocation that you're taking 3 No? So we have
No, that's-
employed in the city of Destin 3 crossing guards?
Well, right now, that's 2 of the vacancies.
Okay.
Right now, we have 1. And then city
Gotcha.
staff have been making up the difference to make sure the kids cross safely.
Gotcha. And then, did you say that we will be touching on the TDC Beach Operations tonight at this meeting?
It's just something for you to keep in mind.
Keep in mind
Because
to,
this is something that's going to affect the council and it's going to come
Right.
to a discussion.
Right. Okay. And then, apologize if this is getting too detailed for you, but they drop in the advertising and promotional budget line item.
So we have to add all of them, so that's another one of the types of things that's being allocated out to the departments that are actually behind the costs. So we've, the city clerk's office has been traditionally paying for all of it. They gather the data from all of the different departments, but this year I've asked for the departments to budget that within their budgets. If you had my special secret abilities to add them all up together, you'd see that they haven't actually dropped.
Gotcha.
We're keeping it, we're trying to keep it as even as possible, but now the different departments are,
So it's not a $55,000 drop, it's being absorbed by departments.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Gotcha. Okay. That's it for now. Thank you so much.
Not right this second, thank you, sir.
Ms. Aver?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Crystal, as Mr. Schmidt said, absolutely clear, concise information. Appreciate the reports ahead. And as the TDC rep for our city, the meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 is about the budget. And I know that they have tried to kind of go back on what we agreed to when we started this whole county-wide, everybody's input. So tomorrow morning at 8:30, anyone on this council that can be at that meeting, it's important that we represent ourselves as a city, that we went into this with a full expectation that the tourists are using all of our parks. It's not just for city residents. And we do want the county and the TDC to hold up to what we discussed in the beginning, that they're going to help manage and maintain and help completely keep these beaches and these parks maintained for our tourists as well as all residents. So I just wanted to make that on the record so that Mr. Schmidt also heard that it is the TDC's option tomorrow morning to make these changes, which we need to let them know that's not what we agreed to, and we really expect them to hold up to their promise to us that if we went in, we would all work together to make sure that the tourists enjoyed this, our recreational areas. The other question I had was about the crossing guards. I did not realize that we have to pay for crossing guards. I mean, of course, my hometown is small, but I mean, it's like the parent volunteers are crossing guards at these schools that I've ever, been around and involved in. So I didn't realize that in Destin we're paying for crossing guards. So that was clarified when you answered for Mr. Schmidt. But yes, a very good report, and I'm glad to see that you've added in what we have to do with our employees. We have to keep who we got. We already have a lot of vacancies. We don't want to create any more. And paying our employees what they're worth and continuing to manage against the COLA, cost of living, as well as merit increases, so that we maintain, the quality of what we have now, and we keep paying them for that quality and not let them get stolen by other cities, because we train them and they love it, and then all of a sudden they're gone. So thank you for allocating and showing us where we can continue to keep that budget.
Mr. Bagby, through your spokesperson there?
And just for the record, we do have Mr. Wagner and as well as Mr. Jarvis online with us tonight.
Okay, Mr. Bagby wants to make the following points. Do we want to remove the pedestrian pathway under the bridge from our objectives? You want that answered, sir? Or do you want me to go ahead and read it? Okay. Should we move annexation up? You assume the solid waste franchise fee increases to 6%. What?
He does not assume that. The council's direction was 1%.
Yes, and at the previous two council meetings ago, we discussed potentially increasing it from 1% to 6%, and I believe council requested that we bring back a plan to potentially restrict those additional funds if we were to do so. So you're right, you're correct. Right, council voted to keep it at 1%.
When will the impact fee study be received?
I believe before the end of this year. We should be having discussions during the summer.
Fiscal year or calendar year?
I would like to say the calendar year, to be safe.
Yeah, and just to clarify for people, impact fees are, by statute, therefore, growth necessitated capital improvements. So when the impact fee report and study comes before council and you have a chance to review and potentially approve it or change it, then we'll take those revenues into consideration in the capital budgeting process.
I was a little unclear. What's the date that we think we'll have that in hand?
I'm trying to be as cautious as I possibly can. I would say before the end of this year, calendar year.
Well, then that
Before
makes,
the end of this year.
the way
calendar
impact
year.
fees work is if you don't have a study to justify the increase,
Correct.
a judge is going to slap you real hard somewhere. So that means perhaps we will not be able to increase those till next budget year.
That's correct. That's correct.
When was the cutoff of the personnel compensation study?
The start date of the new salaries went into effect April 2nd. So this was taking all of the rates that were in effect on that particular day and then annualizing them out.
His point is the COLA is not April over April or June over June. What it should be is the increase for that 3 months that those employees were updated. And then, except those that did not get any raise, then we should have a different rate for them, most likely.
Okay, so two different cost of livings is being proposed. One for the people who received the adjustments as of April 2nd, and another one for all of the people who received no adjustment. And we're proposing that for the people who received the change on April 2nd, that be the CPI that is April over April, maybe. Or it would just be different. It'd just be small, okay. Just the 3 months, April to September. Which I won't know September's CPI index until November-ish.
He said
but
that's
yeah, we'll
fine.
think of something.
You can guess, he said.
Yeah, we'll think of something.
When will the matrix study be complete?
We are meeting with Matrix staff in the morning at 8:30 for a little breakfast and get-together, and it will start immediately afterwards. Their commitment is to turn it around in 8 weeks.
So they're going to be walking through all the facilities Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday. ish if they need anything, but they think they're going to complete the walkthroughs by Friday, and then they're going to be working on the write-ups.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and any kind of follow-up questionnaires or anything will be subsequently distributed, but they've committed to an 8-week project schedule.
So we should be able to incorporate their numbers into next year's budget, correct? If you get 8 weeks, you should have it before.
So we'll have their numbers in August, right? August 4th, we have to certify our millage rate to the county. I have our council members, so I have scheduled our capital workshop for June 23rd, and then we have a tentative second workshop in mid-June or mid-July, which is when I should have all of the finalized numbers from the property appraiser. That workshop in middle of July, we're going to look at the whole picture of operating, capital, and everything, so that you have a comfort level with what we're setting our millage rate at. If you want to keep it the same, decrease it or increase it, right? And then we're going to have individual council briefings the last week of July, so that when you come in on August 1st, you're comfortable setting the millage rate. So anything that we do after August 1st will be more to decrease, not to increase.
So we should have an order of magnitude in the
In
middle of
July,
July.
yes.
Whether it's 2 million or 20 million.
Right, right. And, yeah, I'd also like to have, well, yeah. Hopefully we'll have something in time for our meetings in July.
We are no longer required to advertise in the paper, although I believe we should.
So that goes to the advertising, question, and promotion. Because that's an option? Even though Mr. Bagby personally thinks we should keep it. And Mr. Destin agrees, so, and I agree, so.
Yeah, I think
Let's
that-
put that on there.
The bulk of our advertising costs actually comes from, correct me if I'm wrong, Louis, but it's from the LDC adjustments, isn't it? Yeah, Louis is the generator, the Louis Kim team, right? And,
It's ongoing, it's
ongoing.
ramping up right now because of the work
Right,
that
so-
we're
so
doing.
our
but
advert-
it's-
yeah,
But it's
go
ongoing.
But our advertising cost this past year was close to $50,000.
Question on that.
Okay.
Would you like to show
Online?
their nice faces?
Yeah, wait for it. Okay, there we go. Just on the, if we're going to use, sorry, I can't hear myself. For the newspaper, what other options are legally considered as public, just outreach to be considered like a newspaper? I'm not against the newspaper. I'm just curious what else right now is in the state statute that we can use as an outlet.
The website, the city's website.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I've never owned the paper.
So young.
It's a robbery, so there's nothing to open up anyways.
I do have another question.
Bobby, you have more? That was.
Oh, yes. Yes, sorry. Yes, so for that average house for that 475 per year, I know we're going to get an update. Is that 2021 average house or 2020?
That was the median price in 2021, summer of 2021.
2021.
So I'll update
Okay.
that when I get the new numbers from the property appraiser.
Gotcha. And then I saw in there that you recommended that we don't increase the parking fee. Is there a reason behind that? That might be further along.
No, parking fees, last year, we chose to put them in their own separate fund. So they're in I think it's the 122 fund, and they're restricted to parking-related issues. You're correct, we did not choose to increase the fees at this point in time. It just hasn't
Okay.
been a topic to rise. One change that we did make, that we put into effect for this fiscal year, is that citizens no longer have to pay the parking fees. If they come in and get a sticker from City Hall, then
Exactly.
then those fees are waived for all of our citizens.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of curious and interested in raising it if our citizens aren't going to be paying for it. I was doing some research. Most other cities, from big to small, do $1 an hour up to $5 an hour. So I was just curious. I know we're at 5 for 5 hours at the moment.
Good point, thank you.
Could you repeat?
Uh,
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you continue. I'm sorry, I was going to go backwards, so you continue.
I think that's all I had right now, other than Teresa, I wish I could be there with a pitchfork tomorrow for that 12.5% and the general fund dispute. So give them hell.
I will, Bobby. Thanks for your encouragement.
All right, what was that, Smith?
I was going to ask the translator to see if he could reiterate the first one or two questions. There was something that was brought up that I don't think we got an answer on. I was just trying to refresh my memory.
First question was, do we want to remove the pedestrian pathway under the bridge from our objectives?
Right, so that particular question, is that is that? Okay, all right, I didn't
He
want to make
says
sure I
it's
didn't
not
miss
really
it.
a budget
It's coming.
item, but it's coming, yeah.
Correct, it's coming, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something on this operational budget. I didn't want to miss it, so thank you, Jim. I'm good.
Mayor, do you have some questions for us?
You're on mute.
I think you're on mute, Mayor.
I bet you a lot of folks wish they could unmute me. Not the time. No, I don't. I followed everything that was said. Good questions tonight, and Crystal did another good job. I know when we get into our capital projects, there'll probably be a lot more discussion.
Thanks. I had a couple of questions. Crystal, our 1.5 million that we're going to be adding to the fund, that comes primarily from unfilled personnel. Where else does it come from?
You're correct, it primarily comes from unfilled personnel positions.
So if we were able to fill those positions, we
Right.
would not be doing that next time, right?
Yeah, well, this is, that 1 million that you're seeing, that's our operating revenues minus our operating expenditures, which assumes that we would become fully staffed by October 1st, and that as of October 1st, we would give everybody that 8.5% increase and the 2% merit increase. So that 1 million that we're adding to the 2023 fund balance is just that. It's the operating revenues minus the operating expenditures.
That is our goal though, right? I mean, the
That-
policy is the 8.4 or whatever the index is.
Well, it's whatever the cost of living index is June over June is the
Yes.
norm. So that was the most recent one that I had available when I was making the slides.
It should probably, I hope it goes down, but there's really no realistic belief that it will at the rate we're going.
Yeah, like I mentioned, when we moved it forward 1 month to April, the difference was 1% lower. So again, that's a $70,000 difference
And
if
I
it goes
think
up or down 1%.
It's actually going down a little, the latest projection, but we'll see, huh? Gasoline isn't paying attention to the projections, unfortunately. I just had one comment on the captured rents that we're not getting for the various facilities that you enumerated. I think we should remember that those were all donated to the city. And so,
I don't think the Food for Thought building was donated to the city, but
yeah, the two big ones.
We
But
paid
they
$2
do
million for
serve a
that.
public
right.
purpose, and it's our choice as council if that benefit, if
That
we're
one
getting.
wasn't donated, but the others were, and you left out one important one, which is a substation that we donate to the sheriff's department
The
every year.
sheriff's office, yes, no, we didn't, yeah, they're using it for our public purpose.
Yes.
And they would charge, if it was their building, they'd charge it to us as part of
As
the
are
contract,
those
so.
other two buildings that you said. And the
Right.
reason I make this point is, I think that's probably a false premise to go down. We've probably not even captured the market value of those things, so we're not really giving, it's not like an expense to us at this point.
Well, we do pay, like I said, we do pay the property insurance on these locations. And we
Okay.
do go over and unclog the toilets and, do these maintenance-y type things.
We do.
We do.
And I would be an interesting study to take those prices off of what the market value of those properties are now and see if we are actually going behind. I would speculate that we're not. But in any event, did a lot of good work on it. I've got a bunch of other questions that I'll take up with you when we can meet together, because they get a little bit convoluted and complicated, but there are two philosophies of budgeting. One is see what we want to spend, adjust tax revenues to cover it. That's called the build an empire scenario. The other one is how much do we want to charge the citizens who we represent in taxes every year? And we arrive at that fund, and then we adjust our expenses in that direction. So far, this appears to be build the empire, budgetary, just a personal opinion. And I have confidence that somewhere, when we're through, we'll meet a compromise between those two budgetary philosophies, and we always do. But I just want the rest of the council to understand, at some point, with 8.4% inflation and all the terrible expenses that the public is being subject to right now, piling on is not a good idea from the city of Destin. Any other comments from the council? And our public is still here. You guys have any comment?
Is this the end, or did you, okay. Did you take into consideration the sheriff's updated budget, or their new budget we just got 10 minutes ago?
That's not in these because
Gotcha.
these were published in last week before
Sure.
I had that information, but that would add $128,000 to the bottom line. So, yeah, so we've got the sheriff brings us 128 up. The potential CPI would decrease it about $70,000. So we have those two differences. So we're still hovering around that $1 million mark for the general fund.
I do have one more like for one in there.
Go ahead, Mr.
Go ahead,
Wagner.
Bobby.
Yep. So, and to your point, Councilman Destin, yeah, I would like to find ways to cut costs and increase taxes in any way possible. One of them, I haven't brought it up to anyone but internal staff, but I'm definitely looking into ways to manage our fleet better. That would bring costs down $100,000 per year on estimate. And there's a few other things we can do to add third parties, reduce our costs, not just work, but also fairly. So I'm definitely trying to find new age approach to reduce costs in some of the buckets of expenditure.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. And there are a couple of other ways, and I'm sure all of us in our one-on-one discussions with staff can point them out. Any other comments? It looks to me like we have,
I have one comment. When we get into that part of the discussion, weighing expenditures, cost to our constituents, I just want to make sure that on the forefront of that discussion, we're maintaining the expectations, the services that our city and our staff try to provide to our people. Yeah, I know it's a tough balancing act to keep, and so I look forward to that discussion. That's all I just wanted to point out. Thanks.
thank you, Mayor, and it is a tough balance every year.
Thank you, Crystal.
On that note, we will adjourn.
That's all.
tomorrow, our monies will be discussed at that time. We need to be represented at this meeting.
Sure.
So we can say, hold on, that is not what we agreed to when we came to the table months ago.
Right.
When we added in all these other
And is this a true
cities.
fearful, is this a true comment that we're at concerns with, that they're not doing what we agreed to?
I reviewed the TDC budgets that are being presented tomorrow. So what the TDC, we requested $458,000 to help us operate and maintain all of those beach access points and all of the waterfront parks. So keeping the potties stocked with toilet paper and keeping people running out there every hour to clean out the trash and get out the sand from the showers and everything, right? So the budgets that they're presenting tomorrow, they have dropped our $458,000 request from their general TDC maintenance operating money
Taking it to
down
12.5.
to use $258,000, and they have asked us to use $200,000 of our 12.5%. And they've also had discussions with staff members about changing it. So from their point of view, we didn't used to receive that piece of the 12.5%. So from their point of view, we should, because that's going to be over $1 million a year coming into the city potentially, they feel that we should be using those funds to operate and maintain all of those tourist facilities.
You might want to, Lance has some history on just how that initial payments of the maintenance came about. I think it's probably worth hearing how that generated 5-7 years ago, however long it was. I think it might be good to share that with council.
Sure. It was about 7 years ago that I went to the TDC myself and asked for some assistance maintaining our beachfront parks because that is our tourist industry. And I didn't just do it on a whim. I did a lot of research on it and found and made a direct comparison to how much the county maintenance guys were being funded through the TDC and just asked for a fair share. That's it, period. And I think that's what we've done ever since then. And I think if you all want to help us tomorrow, I think that should be the message. We're still only out for our fair share. We don't claim to deserve 90% of the pot, but we do deserve to maintain our facilities, especially since they service not only Destin residents, they not only service Destin tourists, but there are a number of facilities in what most people consider Destin, which is the county actually, that are not staying directly on the water, that have to utilize those facilities for their beach experience. So, I mean, do our residents use these parks? Absolutely they do. So should they fund 100% of the maintenance? Probably not, because we residents use them too. But the lion's share probably should be funded in one way or another, either through, and she calls it the 12.5% because that's how it was written. We really only get 6%. The 12.5% is what all the municipalities together get. But I think if you want to reinforce we just want our fair share, and we went along with the expansion because we thought we were going to get our fair share. And I think that's the way to move forward with this. There's still, I double checked after I received these last night, I dug in here, and there's still $3.3 million in there for our crosstown connector, so we can't forget about that. There's still a whole bunch of money in there to continue the beach acquisition project, so we can't forget about that and pretend it's not there. But I think if we approach this the way we've always approached it and just say we need our fair share so that we can continue to attract the groups to come back to Destin, the groups we want to come back to Destin to keep coming back, you have to maintain the facilities or they're not going to come back.
And also, Lance, this is what I've had residents and tourists approach me and talk to me about. You can stay in Fort Walton Beach, but there isn't any beaches in Fort Walton Beach. So we are really the beach from Okaloosa Island all the way to, the edge of Destin where our city limits end. And that's where a lot of that beach acquisition and the TDC money's coming in to help us. We are where the beaches are for those in the Destin, Fort Walton area. So we're just looking to get our fair share so we can manage those beach access. We can manage the parks that have basically all been redone and built, like the Leonard Destin Park, Clement Taylor, which is still being fixed up, and then, of course, the one down at the harbor. So we're looking for our fair share because we really are the beach that the folks come to when they want to do the activities, the tourists, as well as residents. And residents from Fort Walton Beach come to Destin, and they're the first to tell me, we love your beaches. We drive over there, and everyone's dreading the Brooks Bridge rebuild, so I know it's going to be a chaotic mess. So I just want to make sure everyone understands, I'm only asking for our fair share, but I want to make sure they understand at TDC tomorrow that we as the council, not just me for our representative, we want our fair share because we want to continue to be able to sustain our cleanliness. And we don't have a ton of employees, so we need their help. And just getting our fair share is the help we're asking for.
Absolutely. If I can piggyback that. I mean, we have a brand, and Destin is our brand. And if it wasn't, then they would not have adopted our name as part of the TDC brand. I mean, the TDC brand is Destin Fort Walton Beach. I mean, people have an expectation when they come here, and when we just need to fulfill that. And just for some that don't have the history on this, we do not get funding for every single one of our parks from the TDC. We strictly get funding for the Gulf Front parks, and we got Noriega Point on there, and they assist us with the Harbor Boardwalk because it is a tourist mecca. I mean, it absolutely draws tourism down there. So they do assist us with those. They don't assist us with parks on the bay right now or any of our neighborhood parks or anything like that. So we're being very fair about this.
And Mr. Bagney asked me, as his spokesperson next to him, to also mention that we also have our Niceville families and residents and tourists and our Valparaiso visitors, tourists, and residents that come to Destin for our beaches. So, like I said, I'm just trying to encourage everyone to come so they can understand how important it is that we just manage to continue to get our fair share so we can continue to provide our pristine beaches, our clean parks, and the quality of what people come here for.
Right, and if I can just add to that, people tend to forget that we're only about 14,000, no, we're less than 14, we're like 13,000 residential units in our town, right? Last I checked, the homesteaded units are less than 4,000. So we only have about 4,000 full-time year-round residents. Everybody else, those are either second homes or they are rentals, or they didn't know that they should apply for the homestead exemption.
We also have about, if you really look at the number of voting personnel in Destin, that could be the military, that their Destin is their address. Destin has less than 12,000 residents in the big scheme of things, but we have 95 to 150,000 people here in the hot of the summer, so we need help.
Yeah, and I think the sheriff's office with their calls, they gave us the numbers for the calls within Destin city limits last year was over 50,000. Over 40,000 calls that they responded to. And you know that didn't come from our 13,000 voters.
Just real quick, and I think the point that I just want to wrap my head around this. So we're being asked to come off of 200,000 or whatever the number is. What percentage of that is? So if we're splitting that 50-50 with the TDC, is that right? No.
No, so we're asking the TDC to cover about 70% of the cost of running the parks that are just on the beach and waterfront that go from the harbor area where we maintain the boardwalk and we're replacing the boards in the boardwalk, down to all those beach access points, out to Noriega Point, and then all the way down to past Crystal Beach to James Lee Park.
Right, and so my question is, when this taxing district was expanded to Niceville, Crest, everywhere, are they coming off any? Are they asking them to come off any of their allotted TDC funds?
I don't believe they were allotted very much TDC funds to begin with. City of Destin, I think, has
I can
always
tell
been
you
one of the
exactly,
largest
they
recipients.
were allotted exactly zero for maintenance in the past. We were the only ones, besides the county maintenance division, that was allotted funding from the TDC for that type of maintenance.
And just so, I think it might be important for the council to know, like legally, how this had been structured, these agreements. So the maintenance agreements, starting with Lance's lobbying efforts 7 years ago, they would come to there would be interlocal agreements between the county and the TDC and the city on an annual basis. So they were not guaranteed, and they've never been guaranteed. There's never been an agreement like the 12.5% where it's spread out over 20 years, and they had to provide that funding. It was really yearly lobbying on behalf of the city that provided the access to that funding. And so that's why with lobbying again, that funding could become available again not out of that 12.5% pot of money. But the 12.5% pot of money, it can be essentially spent on anything related to a tourism purpose that fits under the TDC statute. And that's it's a lot more complex than that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And that would include maintenance, but really that 12.5%, when, throughout all the negotiations, I think was more geared and more anticipated to be spent on capital type projects, not ongoing operating type costs. So I think that's where kind of the feelings of city staff, it doesn't really align with the spirit of the deal that was struck with the TDC and the county, is what I would say.
So our cut of the 12.5%, right, I can understand that. So, but the maintenance costs are coming out of that.
So traditionally they've come out, 70% approximately of our beachfront maintenance costs have come out of just the TDC funding. There hasn't been that separate 12.5%. This year, what the TDC is recommending doing is cutting that number basically in half from TDC, so then the city would have to cover the difference. And then TDC/county has told the city that their recommendation in future fiscal years is going to be to, if the city wants that maintenance type of funding, the city should request it out of its own 12.5% pot of money. So they don't want to provide it out of any other spot, out of their general funding.
Am I the only one who thinks it makes any sense to figure out what that percentage is and pull that from everyone who has an allotted TDC? Am I losing my mind here? Does that make sense? Does that make what I'm trying to say here?
They're all shit.
Julie, can I make a comment on this question that John's asking?
Please do.
I just want to remind everybody that this is the first year that we're going to have self-collection. And we've been kind of at the whim of the county as far as how much is generated, in Destin itself for that finances a large portion of the TDC budget. And I think regardless of how this falls with tomorrow's budgetary meeting with the TDC, I think we as a city in 2023 are going to be a much better position to make arguments on what is our fair share and what we feel that we should ask for, because we'll have those hard numbers. We'll know exactly the kind of revenue that our community's bringing into the county. And I think that's going to help us long term. I know it doesn't address John's concern and his idea about that 12.5%, but I think once we get into self-collection and those hard figures are done, it's going to be a game changer for us as far as the budgetary discussions with the county.
I agree, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you one thing? So I didn't mean to cut you off, Trace. While I've got this train of thought, do you feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not establishing this year, or I'm looking to you for guidance here. What do you think? I mean,
I don't think that we're shooting ourselves in the foot. I've had discussions with staff on the deals that we have struck with the TDC in the past on finance or help sustaining our beach maintenance agreements. It is an annual ask. I feel somewhat slighted with the proposal that we only get $250,000 to do something that we requested twice that much. Another problem, another issue I have with it is I feel like that money's there. It should go to the cleaning of our beaches. I feel like there's an effort to pull some of that money for some other projects that the TDC might want to incorporate. So, in my mind, a deal is a deal, a handshake's a handshake, and I think that should live up to those obligations. Now, I do know, like Kyle put out, that there's no written contract, but we've all been operating on a realm of trust and cooperation for the past few years, and it's working. So now all of a sudden, maybe a little bit of greed or maybe a lack of transparency is creating some animosity here, and I want to be careful that we don't go too far. I think Teresa's going to do a good job tomorrow and make our feelings known. But I just, to stay at the 30,000 foot view, is I have confidence that in fiscal 2023, that when we have these, well, I won't be here, but you had those discussions that with self-collection, we're going to be in a much stronger position to talk about getting our fair share.
Mayor, I agree. We did have the tax collector at our last meeting, at our last TDC meeting, and the amount of businesses and hotels and short-term rentals that have had to register, especially within Destin, I think it's going to be an eye-opener for a lot of the cities to realize exactly what Destin brings to the table. So we still need to ask for what we were promised and continue on that. But if if it's a yearly ask, by next year, we're going to be able to probably double or triple that because they're going to realize we're really bringing in a chunk of change. So thanks for the heads up, the overview, and the clarification, especially for the other members here.
And I'll just have one comment. I will be thrilled to know what we're turning and what we're actually earning, but they know the majority of it's coming from Destin. They always have known that. So we may appeal to their moral compass by letting them know what the numbers are, but that doesn't mean it'll have a bit of difference. And ultimately, we need to all remember this decision will be made by Mr. Ponder, Ms. Ketchel, and their 3 fellow commissioners. TDC is advisory in nature, and so I hope that they treat us fairly and Ms. Hebert negotiates and maybe we pay some or none, but it appears this is an attempt to claw back that 12.5%, which they were not happy with at all, and we all knew that. So let's hope that the board will take the right course.
Mr. Destin, if you don't mind, Destin's well represented on the TDC council, so I have some confidence there. And Mel Ponder's aware of what's going on, and he is our representative and chairman of the board. He's going to do his part to fight for us. And but you do bring out a good point. There's he's one commissioner among 7, so we just have to see how that parses out when the commissioners come to approve or disapprove these recommendations from the TDC council. I think we're well represented. Destin's well represented on that council, so I think we'll have more than just Teresa weighing in on the discussion.
Absolutely, and while we have one representative, I know that all 5 of them agreed to the parameters of the TDC expansion, as did we, and a deal's a deal. So ultimately, we may have to appeal to all of those folks who did go into the deal with us, and we all went forward to make the expansion reality.
Yeah, and I just want to also point out, like Lance mentioned earlier, in the budget that they're proposing at tomorrow's meeting, they still have the Crosstown Connector, $3.6 million that they're going to give to us for that. Beach acquisition, they had over $14 million in that budget from their money. And Crystal Shores Beach Development, They had a few million in there. They also maintain a beach renourishment reserve. And they also maintain a reserve to keep the East Pass dredging going. And they cover that cost every few years as well. Just so, got to keep the whole big picture in mind and keep the good relationships going. And
You're absolutely right, and they are buying and paying for a lot of projects, so that's a good thing. It's amazing with those millions and millions, we're down to squabbling over a few $100,000. And hopefully we won't. Okay, if nothing else is before us tonight, then we will adjourn again.